Everything has a dark side to it in life. That goes for pretty much everything, even for trains. Trains are comfy to sit in because you can look outside and enjoy the scenery. The complete opposite of it are subways. They're kinda scary, or at least they were to me as a kid. There's just something off about them and subway stations in general. That's where Hellnight starts, a game made by Denno Iso Saisrakusho, published by Atlas in Japan and also called the Dark Messiah over there, while Konami published it in Europe and did a fairly bad job of it since there's tons of typos and instead of dubbing the few voice lines the game has, they just removed them. They give one character a French accent though through the text. So I forgive them. Luckily there's an undubbed version of it that adds back the Japanese voices, which is neat and that's what I played. There's not much known about the actual company, except that they worked on a few other Atlus titles, such as the PlayStation 1 remake of Shin Megami Tensei, but they also made another full-fledged game called Desperia, which sadly was Japan exclusive, and at the time of the video there's no fan translation patch for the actual game. But there's an English translation uploaded online on YouTube by the user Popo Moko in the form of a long play basically, where all the dialogues are translated in the captions and it's an interesting experience. You are a normal salaryman living in Japan, just wanting to get home after a hard day of work, but some crazy cold people try to kidnap you, and that has been an ongoing thing recently where people get abducted. So you escape on the subway, but today is an extremely unlucky day because fate decided to have a monster break out of the local lab, who now gets onto the tracks and derails the subway to kill 56 people. If that wasn't already enough, it has set its sights on you. So now you have to escape it through the sewers and many other places that you didn't even know exist right under your feet. Luckily, you're not alone. You meet Naomi, who was on the same subway, and now you try to escape together, because two is always better than one. Maybe not always. So with her together, you have to unravel the mysteries about what's going on here and why all of this is happening, because you do play a big role in it, maybe, but more about that later. I don't want to brag, but I'm way more easily scared than the average person when it comes to horror games. Regardless of how many of them I play, they always get me one way or another, mostly if they got cheap jump scares, which luckily don't exist here. Instead of having to rely on blowing out your eardrums to make you jump out of your seat, I really hate it when jump scares are so much louder than the rest of the game, and I hope every developer who does that will forever have their sleeves fall down while washing their hands to get them wet, so it's really annoying for them. It does its best to create the densest and thickest atmosphere you could ever wish for, you know, something true horror should strive for, instead of trying to get you by using cheap tricks. Your adventure might start at a normal location, such as the sewers, but the more you try to escape, the lower you have to go, even though you want to go to the surface. It's like the good old carrot in front of the horse tactic. The escape route always dangles in front of you. Hey, there's a staircase here. Wanna go that up? Nope, you're not allowed to. Hey, wanna use this elevator to go up? Nope, it's broken and you have to repair it, and even if it's repaired, it goes down. Whoops. Because of that, you delve deeper and deeper into a world that is dark but mesmerizing. After the sewers, you enter the Mesh, an old underground system that the Imperial Japanese Army built for the war. And you can feel that by some of the people down here who still think they're part of the army and never let their weapons down. Like that one Japanese dude who only surrendered 27 years after World War II was already over. But mostly, there's the whole society living down here, and the code that followed you in the beginning of the game too. I love settings such as these, like in Shin Megami Tensei 4 or the anime Gurren Lagann, even though that already drops the whole underground stuff after the first episode basically. It is depressing, but the people down here don't feel overly depressed. It's like they came to peace with living down here, and because some of them actually do have to live down here since they're criminals and don't want to be caught. They got bars, enough rooms to sleep in, a whole factory, a lab, a livestock section where there's no livestock to be found, so it begs the question what they eat, and hey, they got enough booze at least. These people kinda cheer you up in some weird way because you mix together with them, living in their own little world that gives this place a meaning. It shows you that you're not alone, and I know you got your companions, but if you could choose between a place with no one else around or a place with many people that may be a bit weird, what place would you rather choose? Even though I sometimes hated them just appearing right in front of my face, and you know, just appearing in front of someone is kinda rude, isn't it? The more you fall into the depths, the less people are around till no one is left anymore. Since the monster also killed some of them and you end up in places that shouldn't exist at all, coupled with music that makes you wanna not being able to listen to music anymore, because this place here has one of the worst tracks in the game and is kinda the exposure library where you learn tons of stuff about aliens, so you gotta suck that knowledge into your brain while hearing this. It doesn't help that it gets even worse when the alarm here gets activated and makes you feel total anxiety. This track aside, one of the biggest strengths the game has is its sound design and ambience. Every location has its own spooky music that keeps you on your tippy toes and tries to make a shiver run down your spine. In the mesh, it's this really inviting one. In the research section, you only hear the sound of machines working, nothing else except maybe if a monster comes near you. When you enter the livestock area, it plays this beautiful melody with something that sounds like footsteps in the distance. Or the factory where you hear the wind blow. And then there's that one NPC called Leno who makes you think he jumped straight out of a Final Fantasy game, who gets a whole theme for just his room. One thing that is a bit weird though is that you don't hear any footsteps when you walk. Maybe they thought it would get too annoying, or maybe they wanted to make you mostly pay attention to the footsteps and sounds of the monster instead, so you wouldn't confuse them or something like that. So, sound is always one of the most important things for a horror game. Another one are the graphics, more so the visual presentation. Here it's striking. It makes you feel lost, hopeless, bleak. Just like how every section has its own sounds, it also has its own unique style. And also back in the day, you had way more technical limitations that could also help you, such as having low view distances. Here, long corridors are actually your enemy because you can barely see in front of them. Nowadays, when you got long corridors, you will always be able to see the end of it unless it's really dark. On a PlayStation 1, you can't. All you see is the darkness that is threatening to consume you. Insert the Nietzsche abyss quote here that everyone knows. How to defeat that darkness? Walking right into it to make it bright. Just like what you do when you wake up at night and have to go take a pee quickly. Let your eyes adjust to it, and well, the walk to your toilet is not far probably, and you have done it 1,000 times. But what if there's something lurking in that darkness? Something that is out to get you and tries to toy around with you when you try to escape? That's where the game's monster comes into play, called the Hybrid. It evolves throughout the game and gets bigger, faster, and it's one of the rare cases where it never got fully less scary when getting chased by it. If we compare the monster to the typical monster encounter in most horror games such as Amnesia, Outlast, etc., it eventually turns into the classical, yep, I know exactly that the monster or something else will happen to me when I pick up this key item. It takes away a lot of the tension when you can anticipate something happening and can prepare yourself. Time to breathe in and out deeply before taking this item and starting to run away or find a good hiding spot because you just know it's gonna happen. Such scripted events just tire you out, and that's why most experiences like this are also not overly long. Most people are now got halfway through Outlast and wanted it to end already because it was always the same despite the game already being too short, and it did its gimmick way too often for it to be surprising anymore. With Hellnight, I wanted it to end because my heart finally wanted to know peace again, and not because it stretched itself like a gum that already lost its flavor hours ago, unlike horror experiences that don't know when to stop and totally overuse their monster encounters, especially if it's also a bit trial and error where you just die over and over again, which also sucks out the tension because at one point you just become frustrated and not scared anymore. Scripted events do also happen in Hellnight though at some point, such as here. Random guy shows up who talks about there apparently being a monster and suddenly it drops right in front of you. Neat. This actually is your real first look at the new evolution of the monster, unless you already spotted it before, like I did, but only because I challenged my fate. These scripted events don't happen very often though, and when they do they feel surprising, and at points I didn't even know if something was scripted or not. After these viewers, when I reached the mesh for the first time, everything felt safe, despite the safety system turning on and people screaming it's the end of the days, but hey, at least it's not a monster, right? I mean, isn't it a good thing that the safety system is on now? Unless the monster already got in too before the locks activated. You can guess if it did. I talked to the people and everything felt fine except for one hallway where Naomi told me to stay away from, which I did. So I explored around, no monster or anything in sight till I got some documents that I needed to trade with a guy to get a key to leave. On my way before that I found some weird dude called the Mole who tells me more about the items in my inventory and acts as some kind of guide when you don't know what to do with a certain item. I talked to him about the documents and he told me I gotta get rid of them. Now. Fast. Bad vibes. Very atrocious vibes. So I leave and walk around a bit more to explore and suddenly I hear monster noises that weren't there before and I immediately knew, okay, gotta get rid of these documents and just leave. This was one of those moments where I didn't know if I could have met the monster before already or not, and yes, I could have. It was waiting in specific places even before I got these documents. I avoided the first spot by Naomi telling me not to go there, and the second one by not exploring a specific part of the map yet before picking up the papers. By first picking up the papers and only then hearing the noises, the game made me feel paranoid that they were the reason for the monster spawning and trying to get me. So I thought maybe it just goes away in the area if I also give away the documents. Moments like these just make your first playthrough of a horror game so special, when you never know what's gonna happen. A good horror game has to keep you on your toes every once in a while, and Hellnight does that, even if it has to bait you a tiny bit sometimes. By looking up a walkthrough after I beat the game, I found out that the game has specific ambush locations in the game where the monster will ambush you, but there's so few of them, and they never have anything specific tied to them. They're just random hallways that have nothing special in them, so you won't be able to anticipate them. It makes it unpredictable unless you know the game already, and aside from that, the monster just spawns randomly. I found a hidden passage, and when you pass through it, you suddenly hear the monster noises and think, oh hell no, what do I do? Should I turn back? Just go forward and probably see it, and when I see it, I turn around quickly and run away, so you start taking little steps forward to get a bit further through the darkness, till you can make out something till you see a door. No monster at all, despite hearing its noises. Then another time you walk through a different hidden passage, and boom, monster time. It's really hard to know when it shows up or not. Unless you study the game, you will never truly know how the system behind its appearance works. It makes you feel even more uneasy, never knowing if the monster is actually around or if the game plays a little prank on you. The only screens where you are truly safe are the ones where you're not roaming around and see a static background image. Basically the safe rooms of the game without being able to save. Nothing bad will happen to you if you just stay inside of them. Time to get cozy despite 99% of them not being really inviting. Except for the bar maybe. Can't even sleep on these beds. Fear not though, you are also safe when opening the map since it pauses the game. When you get chased and don't know where to go, you can just open up the map, take your time looking at it, and then decide where to run off to. Imagine having to run away from a fast monster with controls that feel pretty damn stiff, and not being able to even take your time to look at the map. Would be a nightmare, which the game still is for the people involved, and easily scared people such as me. Sometimes push comes to shove though, and there's no other way than trying to get around the monster. Most of the time it's fairly easy to kite the monster around, but at specific points I had to get past it, and those moments got my blood pumping. Like here where I need to get past it, and I try to make it spawn in different places by going into a room, because it makes the monster go away, since it would be extremely unfair if it could spawn camp when you come out of your door again. After doing it twice and it always spawning somewhere where I had to get past it, I knew it's time to face my fears and hopefully not get caught by the edge of a pillar and get hit because I gotta protect Naomi. And it was way easier than I thought, but still intense seeing it up close and actually not just turning around immediately and running away like a chicken, which is what I did all the other times. For me, the game never walks into the trap of overusing its monster to the point where it becomes just an annoying part of the game, which most of these games sadly end up with. It knows the best way to keep it intense for you and the monster is to not let you see the monster too much. And luckily it also does not make you hide. Even though for some reason at the start of the game you can walk into a room that acts as a hiding spot, but that mechanic never shows up again. I hate having to hide in a locker or under a bed and then have the monster or person I'm running from slowly come into the room, check some other places and then leave again just to do it again if I notify the enemy. It's just a waste of time after a bit, so I'm glad Hellnight does not have any of that. Another thing that helps is that the hybrid is not extremely stubborn, unlike me. Often it's only needed to run a bit to already lose it again. It doesn't endlessly run after you till it got you or you disappear in one of the rooms. It always feels fair and it keeps the frustration at bay, but for some people it may also lower the scariness because it may start to feel too easy. For me that wasn't the case. It always kept me on the edge, but like I said, I'm easy to scare. Others may play this and think, wow, this is not scary at all. I would hope they could at least appreciate the atmosphere though. The weirdest thing about the game isn't its weird characters or overall plot, which I will talk about a bit later, but how I never got lost in the game, unless you visit an area for the first time, because then you're obviously lost. If someone dropped you off in the middle of New York, you would also be totally lost. After a few days there though, you would probably know your way around, hopefully. I would say I'm decent with directions and don't lose my way too often, but in dungeon crawlers I know it's not one, but it feels like one at points. It's the norm to a degree. You're supposed to feel lost. Despite that, the layout never felt confusing or wrong. It guides you in a really natural way, and you always got a map to check. I got one little criticism about the map though. To truly get every tile of it, you have to visit every tile, step on it. Just seeing it isn't enough. Sometimes you may look at your map and see that one way still could connect to somewhere, but then when you go back to it, it turns out it was just another dead end and you didn't go the extra step to mark it on the map. Happened to me only once, but hey, just a little warning. Every section also has an information display though, where you can check the layout so you can already plan around which way you want to run if you suddenly feel the monster approaching. Dungeons want to be dangerous, even if it may not be the classical dungeon or temple you think of. The world here does not want to be a happy place that is easily accessible, so it only makes sense that most people would never want to step a single foot in here. Even if there weren't any monsters around, I would not go here, unless you would pay me a high amount of money or other services. For example, I entered the research area and groaned when I saw it has two different floors because I thought, yep, now the game is gonna get confusing with its layouts. But that wasn't the case. When I had to return to it later again, I knew exactly where to go because despite using two floors, they just burned themselves into my mind really quickly without making you feel lost again despite its low draw distance and similar textures. The two floors even help you to feel a bit more safe, or unsafe. Sometimes I would wander around on the lower floor and hear the monster and think, oh no, it's right behind me, isn't it? Just to actually spot it on the upper floor, noticing me and starting to run, so I had enough time to also run away myself. Then there's also sections with teleporters, and let me tell you, having a monster teleport right in front of you is kinda not a nice experience. Now you might think that the game has a lot of backtracking maybe when I said I had to return to an area again, but that's not really the case. Most of the time you find the required items while just walking around, so you won't suddenly have to go everywhere again trying to find something that you may have missed. There's a quest though that involves finding two people, and after finding them you always have to return to the person that gave you the quest, but it's not a long trek back to him and just a straight path basically. You may learn a bit more about this quest really shortly because it was the low point of the game for me in a different way. The puzzles are as basic as they come, such as, hey, there's something bolted shut so we gotta use a screwdriver or use the crowbar like Gordon Freeman to break a crate to get something out of it. For most people the puzzles in Resident Evil games are already basic, but these are even more basic. As basic as wearing a jacket or having an umbrella when going outside while it's raining. Always sucks when you have to do that, but can be also nice every once in a while. A nice rainy walk through the scenery, which I would rather do than ever playing Silent Hill 3 on its hard puzzle difficulty. If you ever wanted to feel truly dumb as a dumb person, then that's the perfect game for it. The basic puzzles fit the game though, they feel pretty damn human, despite there being a monster and all kind of weird stuff that hopefully does not exist in our world. When playing other horror games sometimes, there's just those convoluted puzzles that make me groan, making me feel like they got puzzles for the sake of having them instead of making a puzzle that is enjoyable and doesn't just feel like a roadblock because they wanted to stretch the game time out a bit more. A puzzle that just fully fits into its world. That's what I want, but not always what I get, sadly. Like how in some games you gotta get 5 chemicals and every time you pick up one, you gotta get chased by a monster and then go to the alchemy table and mix them together in the perfect order to create a magical explosion bomb that will now go kaboom and open up the way for you. I really don't like those. They don't feel like the developers put much thought into them, unlike the ones in the Silent Hill games where it feels they got purpose to them, and are not just random puzzles that any game can have, most of the time at least. Here you just find some alcohol and give that to people so you can carry on finding a way out here, or you have to find some keycards here and there to unlock the security systems. There was only one puzzle in Hellnight that made me think, okay, how was I supposed to know this? At one point you have to find two people for Leno, and one of them is pretty easy to find because the game gives you a tip like how he easily gets scared by noises, and when you check the box he hides in, the game even says, hey, I hear something in there. So you gotta use your flute and he comes out, which makes total sense. The second person though is way harder to find unless you did an earlier quest differently, so you can totally skip them and get the item you need without any troubles and skip a whole section of the game. Earlier you could give some broken headphones to either Mika or Sugiya. If you gave them to Mika, you can skip the stuff. If you gave them to Sugiya, you now have to go to a room you were earlier in and use your flute on the dresser here and then also break it open with the crowbar to find the second person and finish this quest. In many cases, the game does a good job at giving you tips on how to handle things, but the only clue for the second person basically was that he had a girlfriend once, but it wouldn't make you think it was this specific person that is his girlfriend. And whenever you check the dresser, the lady tells you to fuck off, which just makes sense. I wouldn't want anyone near my dresser either, and never won't, but it didn't make me think that there's someone hiding in there. And even if it made you think to use the flute on the dresser, she also keeps telling you to just stop, so you think, okay, there's nothing here, I guess, since nothing else happened. Guess starting today I should always open my dresser with a crowbar after using a flute on it. That's the only part of the game where I needed to use a guide because I went back and forth trying to find this person with no luck. Maybe if I would have played more old school point and click adventures, I would have been prepared for something like this. There's also a whole bunch of replayability in the game since it has multiple endings and branching story points where different things happen. And that brings me to a point I haven't talked much about yet, your companion. There's actually a whole bunch of them that can join you, but only if Naomi died. Otherwise you won't even know that they can join you. There is no "do you want to exchange this character for Naomi" kind of prompt. You would just never know it's possible unless it's stated in the manual, which I do not own. And sadly I couldn't find any manual for it online to check if it tells you anything about it. If anyone wants to give me $200 so I can buy a complete copy of it to check it, go ahead. When I was rewatching some of the footage and saw the intro again at one point, it mentions that various partners will help you, so it kinda hints at it, but I still would have not known that it's actually possible for them to join me. I mean, they do show up to save me sometimes, so I would think that's what they meant with it in the intro anyways. I found a Japanese guidebook for the game though, but I can't speak or read Japanese, but it has a cute picture of a cat and an upskirt, for whatever reason. At the start, I just kind of thought, why not run into the monster? What does it do? One-shot me? And well, it does, at least your companion at first. I didn't want to be alone though, because I know how awful it is from first-hand experience, and I never wanted Naomi to die again because it would be mean to Naomi to just use her as some kind of shield. What kind of man are we? We gotta protect the woman, not the other way around. To be honest, I love that mechanic. It gives me a fluffy feeling of everyone maybe having a different playthrough. Imagine getting this game back in the day and one of your friends also got it. So you talk about it, exchange some information, and he suddenly blabbers about how he had Kamiya join his party who can actually shoot and stun the monster so you can run past it. And you just sit there and think, wait, that dude can join my party? How? It would also show you that your friend has no regard for life and would easily sacrifice you if it means saving his own skin because he just let Naomi die and kept playing. Rude and mean. Sure, the game could easily just tell you about this, but then it would just feel a bit lame again. Because then it's just not your own choice, even though it is, if that makes sense. You just start thinking, oh, what if this character is better to use? Maybe I should let him go with me instead of Naomi. Especially when you meet some Russian soldier where you know for a fact that he makes for a way better partner because he has a huge gun and a Flammenwerfer. You can't abuse their guns for the whole game though. They got limited amount of ammo and won't be able to shoot the monster anymore if you overuse it. I'm gonna be honest though, you will never run out of ammo, most likely, unless you play the game really badly. It makes me wonder how many people went through the game like me, not knowing you can actually have different characters join you. I also never actually got hit till the very end again, because I let my guard down and tried to run past it, because Naomi might be the strongest character in the game after all, despite her not being able to stun the monster, which she actually can. In the last part of the game she can suddenly stun the hybrid after you learned more about her backstory, which I will talk about shortly, but again, nothing in the game tells you about it. I had to learn it from a guide after we beat the game to learn more about the game, so the last part of the game I didn't need to die because I could have stunned it, but I didn't know, because how would I know that she can suddenly do that? The other companions may have guns, but they can't detect the monster for you. With Naomi, you see a blinking dot on the map whenever the monster is near, which helps a lot. More than just a lot. With the others you can hear it and you know it's there, but you never know where it actually is. The sounds will always sound the same regardless of if it's in front of you or behind you, on a different floor, etc. With modern audio technology you could easily make it so that you can perfectly hear in which direction the noises are coming from, but this is a PlayStation 1 game after all. Thanks to the blinking dot that Naomi puts on your map when the monster appears, you know exactly where it is, so you can already turn around or just run straight away from it when it's behind you. It's the most useful mechanic the game has, so I was right by sticking with Naomi. So the guns are basically there to balance that out, because I could imagine having any other partner will have you walk into the monster way more often and doesn't give you enough time to change your route. It could suddenly just appear right in front of you from the darkness, and then you're basically fucked, since there's no fast turn around button. You have to manually turn 180 degrees, and in that time, if the monster is already close, that might be it. If you use the partner button and the monster is close, they just bam, pang, pang, pang at it and then stun it so you can escape. There's some other changes too, like how different characters react to different things. Naomi is just a normal schoolgirl, or is she? When you inspect things such as some second monster in a lab, she has no comment on it. Like with many things, because she has no idea what's going on, just like you. But the other characters have way more to say about these things that are maybe a bit out of place, or at least try to offer some insight. Naomi just kinda talks about wanting to take a shower. The story is a bit complex, or just gets really out there and may not be something you would expect at first. If you don't want to get spoilers, then now's the perfect time to probably turn off the video, because there will be plenty of them. Like I said at the beginning, you're just a normal Japanese salaryman who just tries to get home after work and has to take the subway. Nothing good ever comes from taking it. But before that, we have to go way back in time. Remember when dinosaurs and super giant snakes roamed around the Earth? What if before that time there was also some big kind of alien ship called the Hive floating through space, with tons of knowledge and everything that comes with it? You know, the kind of aliens that are supposed to be way smarter than us and sees us as little insects, even though these aliens look like insects and their ship is literally called the Hive. So why do they see us as insects? You're the insects, even if you're way smarter, I guess. But somehow they lost power and crash landed on Earth, somewhere in Japan. So now the Hive lays dormant for thousands and thousands and maybe even millions of years, because the impact of the crash destroyed their prince, the most powerful being who was also their navigator. Every ship needs one of those, after all, right? It's like taking away Nami from the Straw Hats. The prince also shattered into pieces that flew into the atmosphere of our planet. Why is that important? Because we grew from that kinda, and because we live in its atmosphere. So we basically breathe in pieces of this prince, supposedly. That's how I understood it, because we all got a bit of its essence in us, and these aliens just harvest it by making us scared. The more scared you are, the more essence they get, which makes them happy. So you better not be scared when they eat you, kinda, which would be hard not to be unless you're into that kind of stuff. So they have waited for many years for us to be born, so they could feed on us to eventually get their hive back up running. And now the clock has hit the right time because of you. They also control the cold and manipulated these people to do their bidding, bringing them new prey that they can feast on. That's why they chased you. You got way more than the average person of that essence. The main character literally is the prince, reborn as a human. Why? Well, I don't think the game really tells you why. It is just that way. And Naomi also got an unusually large amount of that energy. That's why she got psychic powers that allow her to stop the monster after she learns the truth in the last section of the game. The truth that she's not normal at all, actually, which she always kinda knew. Before you reach the end, you have a section where you have to walk through the conversion room, a series of doors in the sewers again, and you all reveal a bit more about the companion's backstory, and you're also showing hallucinations, made to harvest their biggest fears to get even more essence out of them. Naomi is implied to have killed her friends as a kid because they kept teasing her and called her scary, and that there's something off about her. So now she sees a vision of her own mom who is afraid of her, thinking Naomi is gonna kill her too. Her biggest fear is being completely lonely, and without her mom she would really have no one else in her life anymore. Pretty relatable. These scenes also change depending on your partner, like I said. And after that, you learn the whole truth. You are supposed to merge with the hybrid, the monster who was chasing you the whole time, making you the new Dark Messiah, an ultimate being basically, the leader of the hive, which makes me think, why did it try to kill me and my partner the whole time then? Maybe we never actually die when it got us and instead carries us to the altar to merge with us forcefully, but the game makes it look like you die since it doesn't want to spoil the twist maybe? Maybe it wasn't evolved enough to understand what it has to do till the end where it hangs out with the other out ones? The endings are only slightly different from each other except for one, and there are 6 of them. The 3 good ones are Naomi's, Renee's and Ivanov's, because they all survive together with you. Yay! There should be a 4th good ending though. That which wanders, which is an alien that can join you, does anyways. Even if you survive till the end with him, he will actually decide to stay behind with the hive exploding, which kinda destroys his character arc because it was about him breaking free of the hive and being his own person. To be honest, him dying is probably for the better though if you think about it. If he actually came to the surface with us, he would just get captured and us humans would do tons of fucked up experiments on him, which would be a way worse fate than going kaboom with your old kinda evil co-workers. I mean, are the aliens even truly evil? Aren't they just doing what we are doing at the top of the food chain? We can't fully complain if the same happens to us one day, I guess. The only true totally bad ending is when you stay with Kamiya, and I mean, what did you expect? You picked a serial killer to be your partner instead of making him get killed by the hybrid. I get it, he has the most ammo in the game, so he kinda is the best partner to have around, but even then, you learned that he killed a cat. At that point you should have just said, now, I can deal with a serial killer, but a whole kitten killer, I can't stand for that. In this ending, you actually merge with him and become the new Dark Messiah, and merging with a person like that is not something I want to happen. I hope he burns in hell and has tons of cats around him that meow constantly to annoy him and he can't do anything about it. Death by cuteness or something like that. And in the end, when you're all by yourself, you're just surviving by yourself pretty much. Which counts as a bad ending because, well, you let all of them die. I just love how the game kinda escalates like that. At first you might think it's just this whole underground section, which is spooky and cool by itself, but then you end up in an alien ship that actually makes you think it's something out of outer space and something a human would not understand if it actually saw these creatures. The kind of thing that makes you think, hey chat, is this real? They look grotesque and damn cool. All in all, it's a unique experience that was worth it, even if the last section of the game may feel a bit uninspired, because to reject becoming the Dark Messiah, you gotta burn 4 stones and some fire pillars who are hidden in 4 mazes. But every maze is the same. It's the same maze 4 times, not kidding, same layout and everything. They could have maybe changed it a tiny bit around at least, because it's not a maze if the first maze is the true maze and then the other 3 mazes are the exact same maze. It's not a maze anymore when you know the maze. That's maybe my only complaint, together with that one other puzzle I mentioned. It's crazy to me how a horror game on the PlayStation 1 that came out before all these big names nowadays managed to make the monster the better monster, despite all the limitations of the hardware. Nowadays there's so much more possible by making a super smart AI for monsters, but it feels no game ever even truly tries to, except maybe Alien Isolation. The people working on this game really do get what makes it scary and play to its strengths. It makes me sad that they only ever released 2 games, and one fairly cute looking JRPG on the Neo Geo Pocket Color, and many of them still do work for Atlas, but sadly Atlas doesn't really make horror games. The Shin Megami Tensei games are bleak and depressing at points, and have great atmosphere, but they're not fully scary. With that said, I hope you enjoyed the video and will be able to sleep peacefully tonight. Because I won't, because I never sleep well, but especially not after playing horror games. Hopefully you're better at sleeping than I am. Have a good day, have a good night, or have a good anything that fits your time zone. Bye bye.